And hello, everyone, and welcome to Using Data and Information Systems in Partnered Research, a cyber seminar series hosted by VIREC, the VA Information Resource Center. Thank you to CIDR for providing promotional and technical support. This series focuses on VA data use in both quality improvement and operations research partnerships. This includes query projects and partnered evaluation initiatives. This series is held on the third Tuesday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can find more information about this series and other VIREC cyber seminars on VIREC's website, and you can catch up on previous sessions on HSR&D's VIREC Cyber Seminar archive. And a quick reminder for those of you just joining us, the slides are available to download. This is a screenshot of the sample email you should have received today before the session. In it, you will find the link to download the slides. Today's presentation is titled Using Spinal Cord Injuries and Disorders Data to Support Program Evaluation and Research, presented by Dr. Jennifer Sippel and Dr. Bridget Smith. Dr. Jennifer Sippel is a licensed clinical psychologist and has worked for VHA for over 20 years. In August 2017, she began her current position as National Outcomes Director with the SCID National Program Office. In this role, with the leadership and support of the SCID National Program Office Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director, Dr. Sippel led subject matter experts and data programmers in the design, development, and build of the VHA SCID registry. Dr. Sippel is also co-principal investigator for a funded VHA HSI R&D 5-year study focused on annual evaluations and mobility assessments for veterans with SCID. Dr. Bridget Smith is an investigator with the Centers of Innovation for Complex Chronic Healthcare. She has expertise in health services research, health outcomes, and health economics. Dr. Smith's research is focused on evaluation of outcomes and costs associated with the provision of health care to persons with disabilities and evaluation of patient-facing technologies. Dr. Smith is also a research associate professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the Feinberg School of Medicine at Northwestern University. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. And I think, can I just check that the slide advanced?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Sippel, and I'm one of your presenters today. Before we get started, we were hoping to ask you a few questions to get to know where you all are at today, and thank you again for joining. So the first question is, what is your role in research and or quality improvement projects?
All right, so that poll is now open. The choices are investigator, PI, co-I, statistician, data manager, or programmer, project coordinator, or other. And if it's other, please describe via the chat function. Please remember to hit submit once you have selected your choice. All right, so we'll just let that run for a few more seconds before I close that out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll and share the results. We had 23% said investigator, PI, co-I, 15% says statistician, data manager, 8% said project coordinator, and 8% said other. Let's see, other as health system specialist, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how many years of experience do you have working with VA data?
All right, again, the poll is now open, and your choices are none, I'm brand new to this, 1 year or less, more than 1, less than 3, at least 3, less than 7, at least 7, less than 10, and lastly 10 years or more. So answers seem to have slowed down quite a bit, so I'm just going to go ahead and close that poll out and share the results. 11% said none, I'm brand new to this. 11% said 1 year or less. 16% said more than 1, less than 3. 9% said at least 3, less than 7. 3% said at least 7, less than 10. And 11% said 10 years or more.
All right, the last question is, have you used the VSSC SCID Registry in operational reports for program evaluation, QIPI, and/or research?
Okay, the poll is open, and again, this question is check all that apply. So feel free to check more than one choice. All right. So your answers are coming in rapidly. I'll just let that run for a few more seconds before I close that out. All right, things seem to have slowed down quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share your results. 20% said program evaluation, 20% said QIPI, 21% said research, 2% stated others, and some of those are gathering data for VISN and never using SCI or having used VSSC or ICC. And that's it.
Okay, thanks everyone. All right, so VA's spinal cord injuries and disorders system of care is designed around a system of hub and spokes. And so you can see that on the slide right here. There are 25 SCID centers or hubs, and those are the blue dots. And each center has highly trained and experienced providers, including doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists, psychologists, and others who can deal with the unique problems that can affect people with spinal cord injury or disorder over the lifetime. So this is from time of injury until end of life and includes primary care. The SCID centers, each of the hubs, they work closely with other designated medical facilities that do not have SCID centers, and these are called spokes. Those are the red dots on this map. And they just provide more excellent, some components of subspecialty care as close to the veteran's home as possible. One important thing that we wanted to make sure that you all know is that throughout this presentation, we'll talk about SCID data, and it's actually organized by these hub and spoke catchment areas. All other VA data is actually organized by parent facility, and then those are grouped into each VISN, and then all of that is grouped into national. But for SCID data that we'll talk about today, the data is organized by individual hub and spoke parent facility, and then each catchment area. So like for Seattle there, you would have that hub and then all those spokes with the line to Seattle, and then of course national. So here's our roadmap for today. We want to give you an overview of historical SCID data and how it is almost done being consolidated, as well as the new SCID VSSC Registry that includes veterans qualifying from FY13 to present. We want to show you just initial tips on how to use these registries in a combined way, and then talk about our critical population information that we recently automated. So I think I'm going to hand it over to you, Dr. Smith, if I have that correct.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. I'm just trying to, there you go. I think you have the slides. Thanks.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am just going to give a very quick overview of some of the historical spinal cord injury and disorder data. This data spans from the late 1990s to approximately the end of fiscal year 2018. It's comprised of three sources. The first is the Spinal Cord Disorders Registry. That was about from the late 1990s to the mid-2000s. This was a registry that was VA-wide that allowed people to enter, different clinical staff to enter information about veterans so that they would be included in the SED registry. And we'll talk about some of those data elements in a minute. It included Excel spreadsheets from the mid-2000s to fiscal year 2018. So these were structured spreadsheets that staff entered data into and then forwarded on to the program office. And then it also included the Spinal Cord Injuries and Disorders Outcomes database, which was often known as SCDO, from fiscal year 2011 to 2015. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time today to go into the details of these various sources, but if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. And so the consolidation of all these data sources is what we're going to talk about today in an effort to look at veterans who were historically in the system in addition to veterans who have more recently used the system. For example, if you wanted to do a longitudinal epidemiologic study. So there were various ways that were used to identify veterans with spinal cord injury and disorders for research in the past, and also for QI and implementation efforts. These studies often used a combination of the Allocation Resource Centers list, and the Allocation Resource Center it creates lists for VA for budgeting purposes, for establishing patient reimbursement, and then also the SED Historical Registry, which we just talked about a minute ago. And the Allocation Resource Center list has an algorithm for identifying veterans with spinal cord injury and disorders, but the only data that's included there is just the patient ID, and it's the SSN, or the scrambled SSN. An overview of using the ARC and SCD is described in a 2010 Journal of Research Rehabilitation article that I put the site here if you're interested in. And you can also see on the right-hand side of your screen, this is just one of many examples. It's from Dr. Evans and colleagues. This particular article examines C. diff in veterans with spinal cord injury and disorder, but it's an example of an article that uses a historical SCD registry. And there are several examples like that that were work as a result of the SCI query investigators and also associated research projects. So again, we're happy to talk some more if you need some more of those citations or you are interested in some of those previous examples. So I'm going to briefly give an overview of different types of historical data. The first were our SCI&D local registries, and the primary purpose of these registries, all of these data types, is clinical, right? The local registries are registries kept by SCI centers and hubs and spokes in order to track patients. So they would include patient information, addresses, some clinical information such as information about spinal cord injury and disorders, and also when annual evaluations are due. I'll talk about that in a minute, and other types of those data. So then we have annual evaluation outcomes. And the annual evaluation is an annual comprehensive preventive health evaluation for veterans with SCI&D. I can see from our participant list that a lot of you all are probably very familiar with this, but for those who might not be, the idea is that it includes health promotion, evaluation, and early identification and treatment of complications related to SCI&D. And examples, there'll often be a physical exam and then various assessments for social needs, for psychological needs, vocational needs, equipment needs, needs, that may be labs and other kinds of tests depending on what the veteran needs. And these are important because of the in order to make sure that everyone's having a good quality of life and getting good clinical care. And then the other type of data is inpatient rehabilitation outcomes that were used for things like CARF and for clinical purposes. So those are broadly the three kinds of data that are available in these historical data sources. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about historical data, some of the specific types of variables that might be included, including the patient ID or the SSN, and then the patient category. Jenny's going to talk about this in much more detail in a few minutes about how the new VSSC registry identifies veterans as having either spinal cord injuries and disorders, multiple sclerosis, or motor neuron disease. And some of these categories were used in some of these past data types more broadly, but we've kind of tried to synchronize them with the new data sources so that you all will be able to use the data and that we, for research and QI purposes. It will also include the onset date of injury if that's available. Sometimes veterans who have more disease process causes or etiologies of their SCI&D may not have an onset date. It includes etiology, for example, was it traumatic or non-traumatic, and did it include, was it a vehicular accident, et cetera, injury category, and annual evaluation date. An important note is that for etiology, and actually for all these historical data types, sometimes because some of the texts were free entry, there may not have been consistency. So those are just some things you need to attend to as you use the data. And for example, for etiology, some veterans may have been missing the particular cause and may just have been classified as either having a traumatic injury or a non-traumatic injury. So this is just a quick picture of our consolidated historical data. It has a total of a little over 63,000 veterans. Some of these veterans are no longer alive. And you can see that a very small percent are missing one of these patient categories that we created in consultation with different groups. And there's a small group that has motor neuron disease, including ALS. A slightly larger group, there's about slightly less than 20% that have MS, and then that have some sort of spinal cord involvement, which is why they were included in these registries. And then the majority, about 3/4, have spinal cord injuries and disorders. So now I'm going to turn it back to Jenny so that she can talk about the overview of the new SCI&D VSSC registry. The ball is passing.
Thanks, Bridget. I think I got it. Thank you. Thanks for letting everybody know about that historical data set that we're trying to consolidate, make user-friendly, and make available very soon. Now I'm going to talk about the new SCI&D VSSC registry. And in terms of how it was developed, VHA has had a data modernization initiative that I think that we're all pretty familiar with. And as part of that, a few years ago, the SCI&D system of care decided to try to make a much more consolidated and standardized national registry. And so just so you all know, we had a lot of design and development partners. Of course, there are a lot of folks from the SCI&D system of care, subject matter experts. We also have one management of information and outcomes coordinator at each of those 25 centers. And so they basically spend full time developing and maintaining these operational data sources and using them for enhancements in care and so forth. Our partners with VSSC, we just are so grateful to them. They basically partnered with us and did the programming building of all of this and helped us with the testing. And then, of course, I'm from the National Program Office, and we have great leadership that really supported this effort, which was definitely included a lot of people. We did formalize the effort and the collaboration in what's called the SCI&D Registry and Outcomes National Think Tank. So they steered how we developed the business rules and testing. They review the registry validation over time, so they're still doing that. And then they also helped design a few critical population data points that we did modernize and automate, and we'll talk about that soon. A couple of things to just note in the presentation. So Bridget had mentioned SCI, MS, and motor neuron disease as the patient categories. And so when you see this in the new registry, SCI is kind of technically what it says in the new registry, but it does refer to SCID, spinal cord injuries and disorders, which notably includes traumatic and non-traumatic SCID. We also have veterans with MS, with spinal cord involvement that some centers serve, and then also the same with veterans that have motor neuron disease, which is mostly ALS. But when we're talking about SCI specifically, it's important to note that the non-veteran SCID population is mostly tracked using model systems, and model systems only really includes traumatic SCI. So the VHA SCID registry and population definitely is broader than that. And then this next bullet point is just a duplicate of the one before, so sorry about that. So here's a snapshot of the registry. I do believe that the link to this registry was placed in the chat box. So we just wanted to show you where this is. Everyone with VHA computer access can see this aggregate information, and then it's the patient level data that requires national real SSN access, which is obtained through supervisor requests in the EPAS system locally. So our office or VSSC, we don't do the approvals for access. Here you can see that the registry has business rules, and that can also be considered inclusion criteria. How does a veteran get into the registry? If you are at the registry page and click on that blue button that says data definitions, you will get a very detailed description of how a veteran gets into the registry, and you'll also get the detailed instructions on how to request patient level access to the data. So another thing that we wanted to show you is if you do have patient level access and you click on any of those blue underlined numbers on the registry page, you'll get a very large patient data set. And so this is a zoom in to just the items that pertain to the inclusion criteria. So to get into the registry, a veteran has to meet diagnostic criteria. So that would be one of the very many ICD-9 or ICD-10 codes that pertain to spinal cord injury, or the diagnosis for MS or ALS, and we did switch the ALS to motor neuron. And so what is needed is a veteran needs 2 or more of the criteria. Besides meeting the diagnostic criteria, the veteran also needs to meet utilization criteria in subspecialty care. So you can see that if the patient is assigned to a PAC team, an SCID specialty PAC team, they get a green X. And if they've had 210 stop code use, which is outpatient face-to-face SCI specialty, 215 is home care, 224 is just SCID telephone care, and 225 is VA Video Connect for SCID. So if they have any of those, they would get a point, so to speak. And then if you look to the right, there's the SCID treating specialty. So that's the treating specialty inpatient unit codes. If they have any of that utilization, they get an X. And then also for if they have an SCID annual exam. So 2 or more, meeting 2 or more of those criteria gets one into the registry. And so what we want to show here is that our registry is updated monthly. So that blue arrow is just pointing to the update information. So it'll just kind of give everyone an assurance of when this is updated. So every month more patients are added. And then I want to draw your attention to the filters of this registry. So this is a longitudinal cohort. And so as you can see, one can filter to have only deceased patients, non-deceased patients, or everybody together. And so the default when you go there is the living patients, since this is mainly used for operational reasons. And then the next filter is the diagnostic categories that we were talking about, SCI, MS, and motor neuron. And you can filter for one of those or all together. Also, you have the fiscal year cohorts. And so this one says FY21, but the closed out fiscal year cohorts are available for FY14 through FY20. And so the FY21, of course, is to date, and the closed out fiscal years then don't change after they're closed out. And this filter has to do with, do you want all the patients that have qualified since October 1st, 2012 with the diagnostic and utilization criteria? Or if you did that drop down, you could say, I only want patients who've used the system of care in the past 3 years, or I only want patients that have used the SCID system of care more than 3 years ago. So some of the centers operationally do use that, but if you're just looking to include everyone, you would leave it at just since the beginning of FY13. So circling back to the map of our system of care, again, just helping us sort of center on the data and how it's organized. It's organized by the individual hub or spoke parent facility. And then you can look at the data for the entire catchment area. And then, of course, there's the national, the whole national category. And so one thing that was really important when the registry was developed is that that algorithm pulls in patients into just kind of one national bucket. So as you can imagine, that one national bucket is not going to be very useful to an individual hub or spoke facility, or someone at the hub who's managing the catchment area. The patients need to be divided up. And there were just two critical factors that the think tank determined were important. And first, it's where does the patient live? So the first way that we divided up the patients is if you have the patient's address on this map, which hub or spoke are they closest to? And so if they're closest to the one spoke of San Antonio, then they would be on that list and they would not appear on any other list in the whole nation of any of those dots because they live closest to that one. But then you would also want to know, well, do they use our facility? So we have divided it up those ways. Now, you can see here with the blue arrow, that's the list where it says which facility is the veteran closest to. And so, for example, you would basically not find a veteran on more than one list in this particular column. Now, each center can look at this a totally different way. So the red arrow is pointing to the middle column, and that does not take into consideration at all where the veteran lives. It just matters if they have visited any hub or spoke, and they would then be on that list. And so, as you can imagine, if they're going back and forth between Minneapolis and Tampa, for instance, because they winter down in Tampa, then they would actually be on both Minneapolis and Tampa lists in this middle column. And then the column on the right is just a combination of all unique patients from both. So the centers and the individual hubs and spokes and the catchment areas can really track who they're concerned with using this. And if a veteran changes their VHA address on file, then of course that first column would change accordingly. This is where you can find in VSSC, so you all have the direct link, but you can also go to VSSC, and we're under specialty care services. And once you go there, you can see that not only do we have this registry, but we have all of these other reports, so annual exam, COVID-19 summary, and so forth. And all those operational reports are based on these registry patients. And most of those reports also have the same filters at the top. So really our registry itself, that's going to give you a certain, very large data set and lots of data, but you can get all this other data for our registry patients as well. So this is actually just some registry trends. And so this shows the closed out fiscal years from FY14 to FY20 that are available. And you could replicate this table yourself by simply changing the filters at the top of the registry accordingly and just seeing the numbers there. And so this is just for national, but most of the catchment areas, the hubs and the spokes, the MEO coordinators have created these tables for their own catchment area and for their own hub and each individual spoke. This, of course, is for all diagnostic categories. And then you can see this one is just for SCI only, or SCID. And this one is for MS only. And again, these are national totals. And then this is for veterans with motor neuron disease. Again, mostly ALS. And again, you could replicate this yourself by just changing the filters at the top. Okay, and so now I'm going to speak a little bit about using these sources together. So the historical source that is consolidated that Bridget talked about, and then this new VSSC that I just went over for all of you, how could you use that together? So basically what you see here is a snapshot of the registry. We just looked at the VSSC registry. And then on the right, this is actually the corporate data warehouse where the historical data is actually stored. And so that SCI National, that's a very restricted access where the spinal cord injuries and disorders outcomes, or the SCIDU application, all that historical data was stored there. The really old SCD data application from the Vista days, the blue screen days, that is actually stored there as well. And then we also have imported the Excel spreadsheets that the MEO coordinators have maintained, that the centers maintain. And so what we're trying to do is this SCID historical location, we're finishing the build. So that was this collaboration with the Heinz team. We've consolidated all that historical data into there, and very soon we're going to make that available through a DART request. Again, the national real SSN approval through the facility ePass, that's how you get access to the VSSC registry, the one on the left. And the specific instructions for that is in the data definitions, again, upper right-hand corner of that. And then if you did want to use the VSSC new registry for research or published program evaluation, that data will be available through DART, like a DART request. And then for the historical registry, we also will have that available through a DART request. And then what would happen is you would be granted temporary access to the SCID historical location there at the right. So that's our plan, and we definitely will be hopefully maybe doing another presentation on the details of the historical registry and maybe doing something like a researcher's notebook. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how you use these things together. So you would download the new VSSC registry, which I'll show you in a moment. Excuse me. And then you would also download or access the historical registry. And then we would be suggesting that you would merge based on SSN, because there are some patients that are on both of these registries, and then some who are only on the historical one, and some newer patients who are only on the newer VSSC registry. So if you merge them and then get rid of duplicates, of course, then you'll kind of have a master list of all the veterans with spinal cord injuries and disorders that have ever qualified based on this data consolidation. And the one thing to note is that the patient category in the new registry, the SCI, MS, and MN or ALS, we also are putting that exact patient category in the historical data. And so we're hoping that that will additionally assist with using these data sets in a combined way. So this is really just kind of a quick how-to on grabbing a data set from the new VSSC registry. So you all have the link to the page. The first thing you would do is you would set the filters. So if you wanted just the FY18 cohort for some reason, you could simply just use that filter and just only choose that one. You could choose to have people with a date of death in that fiscal year or not. You could also choose to isolate SCI only, MS only, or motor neuron only, or all of them together. And again, there's that utilization filter, which is typically used more for operational purposes, but I'm sure it could be useful for other things too. So you would set your filters, you would click View Report on the right-hand top side of the page. And before doing that, we highly recommend that you read the data definitions. So we've mentioned the data definitions a lot of times, and that's a great way to just get a great grasp on how this is set up. And then once you've set the filters, you would then go to the blue underlined numbers below, and you would just decide, do I want the national number? And do I want only one particular catchment area? So if you click on a blue underlined number, it'll just bring you to a page and show you the first few rows of that data set. And of course, this is only if you have the PHI access, the SSN access. But then once you get that page, then you use this little computer disk icon, and it's misspelled. It's supposed to be a CSV file, not CVS. But so you would just use the drop down, and there's a lot of different formats that you can use to download the data to use, but we recommend CSV files. Those just tend to be the easiest format to just get everything quickly. When you do get, again, both data sets, it's the primary qualifying diagnosis and the SSN. So those are the two variables that you're going to be really interested in. And again, you're going to combine for the unique SSNs, because some will be on only the old registry, some only the new registry, and some on both. And if they are on both, we're actually recommending to use the primary qualifying diagnosis from the new registry if it conflicts with the old registry. But that would be for the individual user to decide. And so now I will hand it over to Bridget to talk a little bit about some research questions.
Thank you, Jenny. So this will be just a couple of brief examples of some ongoing research that's using both the historical data and the new VSSC registry. I think I saw Dr. Samir Siddiqui. He's leading a paper with our group looking at the description of use of My Healthy Vet by veterans with spinal cord injury and disorders, and this integrates data from VSSC, Excel, and the SCD registry to identify new users of My Healthy Vet and what kind of features they were using a few years ago. Some other examples of research in progress include some work we're doing to examine trends in annual evaluation utilization, which we're very excited about, and also looking at doing some work looking at the association between different veteran characteristics, for example, travel distance or level of injury and annual evaluation receipt. So thank you, Jenny.
Okay, thank you very much, Bridget. So next, we have finally made it to the last section, and we just want to talk about how this unified patient identification also has critical SCID population information attached to it. And so those of you who've worked with SCID data before might kind of understand that there are some really critical population information pieces, especially related to SCID, like injury category. So if it's high tetraplegia, low tetraplegia, high paraplegia, low paraplegia, or ASIA D, that really speaks to the type of injury that a person has. Also, onset date is pretty important. So when did the injury occur, or when did the diagnosis or onset occur? And then also SCI etiology. For those with MS, the EDSS score is important. And so all those that I just mentioned are in this SCID status update data set. And so this is newly automated in May 2020. So there's a new CPRS health factor template. Of course, all this information has been, all this information has been obviously documented, but in free text over the years, and so it's now automated. I believe that the link to this report, along with our other reports, is in the chat box if you want to go to it. But what you'll notice is that for all the living patients, we're kind of running about 80%-ish, 75 to 80% nationally in terms of completing this information. So we have a goal to get all of this automated information for all living patients and then keep it populated. So basically, in addition to specific pieces of information just related to the patient's condition, we also have information on ventilator status, bladder management method, the living setting, patients that have caregiver support, what that status is, as well as education and employment. And so again, this is for all our registry patients who are living, and we just continue in the field in the SCID system of care to implement this new-ish progress note template in CPRS. I do want to mention to you all that this CPRS template is already replicated in Cerner. And so there's a power form in Cerner. That's the one facility that's turned over to Cerner, Spokane, Washington. They are an SCI spoke site. And so they are actually completing this information in an automated way in Cerner, and it's being syndicated back to VA, and VSSC is putting it in this data set. So additionally, this template that I'm going to show you, it's replicated in Cerner. It will be the registry sustainment plan moving forward. So this is pretty critical, and we also think that once this data is fully populated for all living patients, it'll be really helpful to have. It's operationally helpful. It helps us with emergency response interventions and quickly identifying patients who need certain things in an emergency, identifying risk in the pandemic. So there's a lot of reasons why this is really critical information. So in the next slides, I'm just going to show you what the CPRS template looks like. I don't want anybody to get super hung up on the details here, but I just wanted you to know that there is an SCID status update CPRS template with all of these health factors, and it was clinically implemented in May of 2020, and we're doing okay. We're hoping we can get 100% of the living patients to have this. Clinically moving forward, the centers and the providers will, utilize this template to make updates as clinically indicated. You can see here that, there's the choice of the primary qualifying diagnosis or which category, and then we have all of the details that would be entered depending on the patient. And again, not to get super hung up on the details here, but here's kind of what the ventilation status looks like. This is the bladder management status. And also the registry and outcomes think tank developed all of these items, and some of them are really kind of VA oriented and clinician oriented to make sure that it's, workable for them, but also they did take into consideration the model systems data to try to make it somewhat comparable. So living setting, as you see here, was kind of one of those. We have caregiver status, and we have education, and we have employment. And so again, all of this information is in the SCID status update report. And again, you can see how it's set up really similarly to the registry itself. So you can filter for different subsets of the population that you might want. And again, just keep checking. We're just really hoping to get to that 98, 99% populated at all times so that the data can be used. So in summary, we have hopefully given you just a broad overview of the historical registry information dating from the late 1990s, kind of closing out at the end of FY18, and how we consolidated that from a few different historical sources. We talked about how we're putting that in a restricted access CDW location so it can be available through a DART request soon. And it is the SCID National Program Office that will manage that SCID_historical location. And then the new VSSC Registry, which accurately identifies our veterans with SCID who are eligible for SCID System of Care services. It provides updated lists to SCID centers and spoke sites, so it's really important operationally. It just serves as the foundation for all of our other SCID System of Care reporting. So those other reports that you briefly saw here, they are all based on the registry. And then this we're just hoping to have available for program evaluation and research use through DART request. And then, of course, the new registry, the actual access, the physical access is requested through the local supervisor and EPAS at the facility. So I guess our hope is that we've established a more consolidated total registry for SCID so that folks who really want to identify a larger set of veterans with SCID reliably and consistently. We hope that this serves as a foundation for that. We really appreciate your time in attending today and hearing a little bit about this. We certainly hope to put out more detailed information in the next maybe 6 months or so. So thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge my co-presenter, Dr. Smith, and also Dr. Charles Nika Evans and Dr. Kevin Stroop. They are a team of us, and we've been working on this historical registry consolidation. Dr. Evans and Dr. Smith are on the Registry and Outcomes think tank, and so we're grateful to them. We also have Belinda Frazier from the National Program Office, and we have Jenny Hull from the Hines Research Group, where Dr. Smith and Dr. Evans and Dr. Stroop are, and we're just really grateful to them as well. They've been, working on this data with our team. So with that, I'll just, I guess, hand it back to you. I think Amanda or Whitney. I'm not sure. I'll hand it to you. Amanda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sippel. So a reminder, you can add your questions to the Q&A box. We already have some questions. The first one, is there any limit to the number of cases that can be downloaded?
I don't think so. I mean, you can always get all of the cases. Basically, if someone is able to get national real SSN access, if they're talking about the new VSSC registry, they can just access all of that if that access is granted. So I guess there would not be a limit to that. And that's standard for all VSSC products. So even for other, patient data sets from VSSC, I think it's the same. If you're referring to the historical SCID consolidated data set, that the limit will be just what we have available. So it'll be a certain number of Social Security numbers with just a few of those data points we mentioned. I hope that helps.
And is there some type of training available, specifically maybe how to pull data from the VSSC, from the SCID National Registry?
So I guess if you were to go back, I don't know if we can go back to slide, let's see. If we go back to slide, oh gosh, I don't know which number it is, but I'd be happy to reverse back to some slides to show. But basically, if you just go to the registry links that we provided, you can just download it right there into a CSV file. So it's pretty simple. I think probably maybe a colleague or someone at your facility who's done that could probably do it. It doesn't require SQL coding or anything like that.
Okay. And is there the use of machine learning is becoming popular in the analysis of SCID register?
I'm not sure what machine learning is. I'm sorry.
Okay, not a problem. And then for inpatient stays, does it list the admitting site or the spoke site? It appears to be a spoke, and that will be tedious to look up every patient to determine if the admit was at our station. Column names I'm referring to are the treating specialty columns towards the end of the spreadsheet. Last SCID treating specialty division appears to be the spoke rather than the actual station of admission.
Well, if you actually are looking for specific lists, I hope I'm understanding the question correctly, but, and I don't know, is it possible for me to go back to other slides or?
Yes, sure, I can. Whitney, can you move the ball over?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Can you move the ball over to Jenny?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that this helps. So I'm just going to go back to the slide that had, okay, I think this might be, yeah, that's probably a good one. So if you go to the registry link, and I don't know if whoever asked the question, I think it was, yeah, Carrie, if you have the link, you could kind of go and sort of do this along with what I'm saying. But as you can see on the registry page, you have all 25 catchment areas listed. But then if you click the little plus sign, so here you can see on this slide that the plus sign was clicked for Augusta, like that catchment area. And you can see there that like the Atlanta spoke site, the Augusta hub or center, Charleston spoke site, Columbia spoke site, Duluth spoke site, all of those individual hubs and spokes are actually then divided up. And so if a person wanted, a person wanted like the Dublin, Georgia spoke site patients, you could click on that blue underline number and just get the data set for only those patients that perhaps live closest. So you would use that first blue column, and you would use the Dublin, Georgia line, and then that blue underline number, those would be all the patients that live closest to the Dublin, Georgia spoke site than any other hub or spoke in the nation. And then you could click on that and get that data set, and it would actually show the treating specialty along with, you know, any of the other data that qualified them. But if a person wanted to see like other types of utilization, then it would require using just those SSNs, but then pulling from the CDW. I hope that helped to illustrate that a little bit.
And what are your suggestions for handling missing data for longitudinal studies where a veteran might have died before the newer data collection occurred?
I think maybe, Bridget, we've discussed missing data a lot. Would you want to maybe jump in on that one?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, excellent. So this is a complicated issue, but there are a couple of different approaches we've used. One is, for example, I think I mentioned briefly earlier, that if we don't have etiology for everyone, we might be able to use kind of a multifaceted approach to determining what we need to do with that. So, for example, we could look through ICD-9 and ICD-10 codes for particular traumatic or non-traumatic diagnostic codes. Or we could lapse them. Another option is to kind of model the missingness. If there's a large percentage where we actually, if we're using it, create a categorical variable, then we could create one category for missing and kind of go from there. And it is, I think this is always kind of an ongoing challenge when you're using historical clinical data, because there may not be resources always for people to enter it, or there may just be examples where there's missing data. So I don't know if you have anything more to add, Jenny Sippel, about that?
I don't, but thank you so much, Bridget. Yeah, I'm just kind of more working on the data side, and I'm hoping that for a lot of those data points that, we can, get those fulfilled. I'm not really sure how we're going to do in terms of patients who have a date of death. That's a lot of patients, and I just don't know what resources we might have. It would involve filling out a CPRS health factor template for patients who are already deceased, and that could be done kind of using, chart review and the data that was true kind of, most recently before they passed away. But that's not something we've explored yet, just because we're trying to get all the data populated. But I put something in the chat. I believe someone named Christopher Martin had asked about the REC ICC report, and that is one of our reports where SCID data goes. And so I just wanted to let you know, Christopher, that I could present on that in a lot more detail at the REC ICC Data Trackers monthly call. So I hope that helps. Anyways, back to you, Amanda. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. I was looking at the MS patient data in the registry just now, and it shows 33 patients for Kansas City, the St. Louis hub. Last time I checked, it was more than 150. Is it important importing only select patients, for example, ones with paraplegia or quadriplegia?
So, and can I just check, that was patients with multiple sclerosis? Is that the question?
Yes, it says MS patient data.
Okay, great. So for MS and for motor neuron or ALS, for those two categories, it's only the patients that go to centers where they actually see those patients. So it is a little confusing because veterans with SCID, in that category, they're eligible and all the centers would see them. But for example, I'm not sure about the St. Louis site, but for example, in Seattle, they really don't see hardly any patients with MS, even if they have spinal cord involvement in their condition, because at Seattle, there's an MS Center of Excellence, and the way that the SCI Center and the neurology department and other services at the Seattle facility have worked it out is that they think the best care would be provided to those specific patients in the MS Center of Excellence. But then there are some SCID centers that actually see quite a few patients with multiple sclerosis that have spinal cord involvement, and where those docs would be especially helpful. So for any time that you're filtering for MS or MN or ALS, those two categories really kind of depend center by center. And so I hope that helps. I hope I've captured that.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, so I'm going to wrap up. And thank you so much to our presenters for taking time to present today's session. To the audience, if you have any other questions for the presenters, you can contact them directly. Their contact information is in the slides. And please join us next on May 18th for our session titled The Arranged Marriage Between Innovation and Research, Lessons Learned from the Flow VACE Partnership. Thank you again for attending. We will be posting evaluations shortly. Please take a few minutes to answer those questions. Let us know if there's any data topics you're interested in, and we'll do our best to include those in future sessions. Thank you and have a wonderful day.